line with the requisitions.
And
Yes.
And I do have one other item. We need to acknowledge the receipt of an annexation of 21.5659 acres in Union Township to the city of South Lebanon, and this is an expedited type 2 annexation.
So moved.
so we have no discretion, we just are
No
acknowledging
discretion,
it.
we just need to acknowledge.
Second.
We acknowledge.
And that's all I have.
Very good. I only have one work session today. Molly, good morning.
Morning. Molly Conley here from Director of Warren County Soil and Water Conservation District. So I have two events to invite you all to. First is the Warren County 2024 Warren County Leadership Float. Pass these out. Actually, Martin has already signed up for this.
There you
I've
go.
sent out some emails. You might have seen this in your email actually, but here's an official invitation to this. We did it last year. We partnered with Greene County and Hope Taft. She leads Little Miami Watershed Network, and she inspired us to continue this effort. Basically, the idea is that we are gathering decision makers, elected officials, leaders in the municipalities, the cities, townships surrounding the river to get them out on the river, let them experience the river, connect them to the river, and then we bring in experts during the lunchtime to speak about things that might come in front of you for decisions, stream bank stabilization or projects that impact the river, ways that you could improve the river, help the river. So we have people from the OEPA coming in to speak, from Miami Conservancy District. We have different speakers each year, but this is your invitation for Friday, July 12th. It's gonna be 8 a.m. to 1:30, and we're gonna start up at Clint Foltz. River's Edge Outfitters kindly shuttles us and donates the boats, and we hope you can come. And then the second one, we just got these are hot off the press. I wasn't sure if we were gonna be ready for today, but this is your official invitation to the 2024 Tri-County Commissioner Tour. Now, historically, Soil and Waters have done a commissioner tour every 5 to maybe 10 years or so. But I worked for the county for 13, and I don't think we've had one in that time. The idea of this is the state kind of inspires us to do this, just to show what we're doing in the county, our value to the county, where your dollars are going in the county. So what we've done this year is to start this back up again, teamed up with Greene County and Clinton County. So we're gonna have a Tri-County Commissioner Tour, bring all the commissioners together, but also elected officials, partner agencies, anyone that helps fund us or contributes to our effort. We're pulling together. We're gonna each county is gonna have our specific county tour kind of in the morning. We're gonna take to 2 or 3 stops, and then we're gonna convene actually in Warren County at a site of a 319 OEPA grant site. We won a grant up on a farm in Warren County near Cedar Creek Lake to put in an agricultural conservation practice. This is a new practice that the state is experimenting with, and we won a grant to install this, partnered with Greene and Clinton County to install it. We partnered with Central State. We're gonna monitor this practice, and then we're hoping to inspire our federal partner, NRCS, to approve the practice. And so we have Greg Landsman, a U.S. Congressman, that's going to attend. Adam Matthews is going to attend. We have hopefully Director Vogel from OEPA is going to speak at this event. We have Director of Agriculture Baldridge is going to speak at the event. Central State President will be there speaking. So we'll have a couple stops here in Warren County, and then we'll go to the site of this agricultural practice and have a nice catered dinner with a few speakers. So this is August 15th, so we have a bit of a time until this event, but it's around about 2 to 7 p.m. is the time frame there. So I hope that you all can block off that time, maybe talk to your commissioner partners in Greene and Clinton County and see if they are coming, and help inspire them to come as well. We're hoping for a great attendance at this event in August. So we hope that you can come to that. And I'll be sending more communication about it closer to the event. But this is a card to keep on your desk.
Great, thank you.
So thank you. And then also I'd like to now invite Ray Otto up. He is from the Waynesville Garden Club, and he's going to tell you about his pollinator work with us. He is a partner with us, and he has been speaking to area township boards, councils, and he can tell you more about where he spoke, but he's working with us on a pollinator pathway project, and he'd like to speak with you today. So
Sure,
thank you.
come on up.
Good morning. I'm Ray Otto, like she said, employee upright Pat Air Force Base veteran, and we got into gardening as part of my PTSD recovery. My last tour was not the best place in the world to be, and so I went from aircraft mechanic and dealing with mechanical things to gardening. And our garden club stumbled across something called Pollinator Pathways, and it took us about a year to get Central State and Ohio State to identify which pollinators were most endangered here in Warren County, southwest Ohio, not just the big picture of Ohio, because we're definitely varies in region and stuff. I gave you some handouts on your desk that the soil and water was nice enough to give you, but if you'd like to follow along, I don't know if Susan or you. Next slide, please.
You actually can use
Oh.
the arrow key.
Okay, the reason Pollinator Pathways comes about is we need contiguous. The moths and different things like that can only go so far. So right now, what's happening is because of development in Warren County, they're becoming little islands. And by asking people to plant one little plant or stuff, we connect those and make a pathway so the populations can reunite and keep on populating. Right now, we know that the distance, moths have not been researched too well. Our best guess is the moth that we're pointing out, the first one, the most endangered, can only go about 1,500 feet before it needs to refuel. And the plants that they have are in Caesar Creek right now. It's about one of 100 known locations where we still have these moths. And I'll tell you why that's important as we get going here. It improves the whole food chain. You go from the soil to fungi that breaks down things that are rotting, and basically you go into bugs, then you go into the birds and the animals and build our network. One of the things I'd like to point out is that we have seen degradation of what we've seen. About 15, 16 years ago, I started at Right Pat, lived in Waynesville the entire time. During the summertime, once a week I had to clean my car, otherwise I couldn't see through the windshield. Have you noticed it now? I probably only wash it once a month because there's that fewer bugs in the area. Development has happened. And so what we're trying to do is reconnect things. And so with Warren County's Water and Soil Conservation District, they've partnered with us and they were nice enough. Game one is we're trying to connect that population in Caesar Creek to Lebanon to Waynesville because we're late. Central State and Ohio State didn't agree and tell us what bugs we should be helping until about 8 weeks ago. So I tried to get to all the elected officials so they know what's going on. And what I'd ask you to do is say that you've been briefed, and if you're supportive, I will add it to our slide deck. And all we ask is, if somebody asks you about it, refer them to Water and Soil or to the garden clubs, and we'll take it from there. But we wanted to make sure you know what's going on in the community and not be surprised by crazy citizens. The first and most endangered is the blazing star moth. There's only about 100 populations left. Some of those are in Kentucky, and the other ones are in Michigan. Right up near the Ohio-Michigan border, there's a swamp up there, and it's very known for bird watching and everything. That's because of the blazing star moth. Something incredible about this is it only lives on the blazing star plants. There's about 32 varieties in the United States, 13 are in Ohio. Any one of them supports that moth. And what's interesting about it is the moth comes out in August, October. Somehow it knows when to be alive at the exact same time as the plant blooms, which is the exact same time bluebirds and finches and other birds need their high protein caterpillar and pupae to feed their baby birds. So you may have also noticed that Caesar Creek's populations and population of birds here, native birds, has gone down. We got a lot more sparrows, generalists, but these are the food for those baby birds. What's interesting about the blazing star is it lays its eggs, sometime in the fall in the soil next to the Blazing Star plant. They stay underground for a real long time, and at the precise moment, who knows how they know, but the weather gets nice, they come back up, bore, that's where the name borer comes in. They bore into the Blazing Star plant, metamorphose again, come out of there, and then they burrow into the soil. And they stay there all winter. And then the next year, the whole process starts right again. But somehow they know the timing, the weather, and everything in Mother Nature works. But if these plants aren't here and these moths aren't here, we're killing that population along the pathway. So what we're trying to do is build Lebanon to Waynesville this year, and next year we'll continue to communicate and expand beyond that. But reinforcing that population that we have at Cedar Creek and hopefully expanding it is what we're hoping to do just this year. The second species,
One question on
Yes,
that. So if there's a specific plant that's a flowering plant that supports that species, could there not just be an education process for, local landscapers and things like that of, hey, when you're doing a plan, can you throw some of these in?
You are exactly correct. So what we're doing is, we're just reaching out and make sure you know about it. And then the garden clubs are passing the word. I've hit Burns, Grandma's, Waynesville Nurseries, and I'm just communicating. We're looking for win-wins. We're not asking anybody to do anything different. There was a group, this Pollinator Pathway Initiative started in New York City area. My family's from Eastern Long Island. They were whalers and farmers. And what happened is about 10 years ago, they had to start importing bees every year to pollinate their crops because the island of New York had stopped allowing the pollinators to come through. There just wasn't enough to do it. So some smart people got together and they identified what plants they needed, and they asked all the people in the New York suburbs to plant them. And within 3 years, they didn't have to import bees anymore to pollinate their crops. So that's where Pollinator Pathways comes into this picture. We're doing the same idea, but they picked out the monarch and the blazing star for here in Warren County, basically Cincinnati all the way up to Columbus, because that's what's hurting the most. So for this year, we plan to focus and ask people just to focus on those two types of insects, pollinators. And if we can bring those back, then in year 3, we'll add the next one that Central State and Ohio State's bug doctors tell us is the best to propagate. And then that helps everything else in the food chain. Right now, we're at a point of only 100 of those little islands left of the Blazing Star. The monarch, you've heard all the publicity they have, and they're asking us to plant milkweed. The Water and Soil District hands out free milkweed to everybody, but people don't like that nasty thing in their yard. And what we're doing is transforming what people are thinking and just trying to ask them, hey, don't have an English garden. Try planting 1 or 2 of these instead of some non-native bush. And we're learning that that incredibly enhances nature around us. So that's the basis of the pollinator pathway. Let me see if I can get this back up here. Oops. That's the website, so that's nice. I'll go back, I'll refer you to your slides since I have a shaky hands here. Things we're asking people to do is 1, to plant the Blazing Star or a monarch. If you could bring it back to there it is. Actions you can take, we're right where we need to be. Thank you. By planting a Blazing Star plant, just ask 1. There's many varieties, there's 13 varieties. Grandma's was kind enough to do our kickoff. They've sold half the Blazing Stars that they were able to secure for this year because, again, we were late in asking their growers to get them for them. So with that, we should see a rebound of the Blazing Star by next year or the following year. The other one is the milkweed or butterfly weed. Anything you can look up monarch. It's also on the Warren County Water and Soil site. If you go to services for residents, you'll see Pollinator Pathway. Again, that connects the butterflies. Monarchs have 4 generations. Ones that fly all the way from Mexico up here. 2 and 3 just show up here, lay eggs to repopulate, and all those babies become food for more baby birds, because baby birds don't eat seeds, they eat protein, and that is caterpillars. And then the fourth generation of a monarch is the one that flies all the way back to Mexico. So in our area, the two most endangered pollinators that we have is the monarch and the blazing star. Our local star, and the one we're focused on, is really the blazing star right now. So we ask everybody to plant that. The next thing we ask you to do is provide winter habitat. So leave your autumn leaves on the ground. If you want to put them in one place, just put them in the back, because bugs, insects, that's their insulation to stay warm. A lot of our native insects burrow into the ground and stay there. But if the ground is barren, or you've scraped it off or cut the grass real low for winter, it doesn't have any insulation. So then they freeze, we're done. And so again, that's another thing that's decreasing our population of bugs here. Don't use the pesticides. If you're gonna plant these blazing stars and milkweed, please don't plant them next to your house where you have the house sprayed for ants and bugs, because then you're just making an attraction to kill them off. And so plant them away from the house, do your little islands, do away with some of the grass. Let your grass grow a little higher, it creates more insulation, places for them to hide in the heat as we're getting more variations in our temperature. Do not use weed fabric, a mistake that I made. We talked about them going into the ground and then coming back out of the ground. Put weed fabric, they can't make it. So lessons learned. Next thing with weed fabric is please use leaf mulch, or what we call arborist mix, or that first chipping, like when they cut down a tree and they throw it in the chipper. Because if we use the stuff from Lowe's, Home Depot, or other places where it's finely ground, it makes a hard, firm carpet that the bugs can't make it through. So if you think of a little caterpillar trying to go through the triple shredded mulch, it can't make it. But the big chunky mulch, it can. So that's called arborist mix, and or just wood chips. So we're asking people to do that and not to use the dyes, because again, we don't know what it affects in the water table and stuff. Just as in one step further, keep on getting it. Mow higher, less lawn, plant a few extra things, all helps all these pollinators. Again, this helps the fish in the rivers, etc., because everything's feeding off the pollinators and or insects. So that's what we're up to. As was mentioned, talk to Boyer Farm, Cincinnati Zoo, they're on board. Next year, they plan to kick off, and we'll extend from Lebanon down to Cincinnati, and they're gonna be using their pollinator push, so to speak, to be highlighting the blazing star and some other things. And at the same time, the suppliers of plants and stuff will be ready for next season. So Cincinnati is on board with that. 5 metro parks up north is also aware of it, and they're considering it. Dayton Wild Ones, I briefed them. They are gonna be on board for next year, but they're already down the path. Homegrown national parks is another thing. Doug Tomley is a very famous author. He has a society called the Homegrown National Park. Their promoter lives in Kettering, and they're on board, and they will be supporting this also. So again, it's just hey, plant natives, and here's a few individual types that we ask you to plant, and that should help this community, and then we'll take it one step further. All the garden clubs, Town and Country, Lebanon, Bellbrook, we've reached out to almost all of them in this last 8 weeks and let them know they're all on board. We just wanted to make sure that you were all briefed, so if you had questions, you wouldn't be surprised and not know what's going on in your own neighborhood. Is there any questions?
Well, I mean, my initial thoughts are, number one, thank you for your service. We appreciate that, and that's two polar opposite career paths.
It is.
But good for you.
Thank you.
Number two, I'm a little familiar with this. We're actually in the middle of building a garden ourselves.
Awesome.
And so I've been learning a fair amount about this recently. What I also like is you're not coming in proposing stop development, take away private property owner rights, anything like that. It's just saying, hey, this is good for all of us if we're a little conscientious of this. How about doing this small thing and then we all benefit? I like that. So I would recommend that if you're trying to get that pathway, I mean, I would be okay. The county owns a lot of land, in certain areas that maybe You know, I almost think of it like in Florida where you have sea turtle areas that are coming, you know, you put stakes around them and people know not to mess with that. Potentially if we're, you know, planting some natural, some people might think it's a weed, but you know, you're planting and you have red stakes around them, you know, the people that are mowing 2 years from now know not to cut those. You know,
Exactly.
that do we, you know, open up some, if privately funded people wanna come in and plant some plants on county-owned property, I have no problem with that. And as a matter of fact, if you're really desperate for something, you know, the county roads, I mean, in the easement, could, you know, as long as it's not in somebody's front yard, you know, could we potentially do that?
You were right on the mark. So in England and some of these other places, they have started doing roadways in different areas. And again, it's just, we're letting you know, and where there's win-wins and you see an opportunity. The reason they're doing roads and they're not doing the center now is now you have more bugs hitting your windshield. And if the bugs are there, the birds are there, you're creating noise. But on the side of the roads, they've started doing it in many locations, including Connecticut, because they don't have to mow. Once they establish the pollinator area, they picked low plants so you can see any animal coming out of the woods. But again, it's just, we're the very initial stages of this and just going, wherever there's a win-win, we ask you to consider it. Lebanon, they're putting in the solar farm just down the road, and they are, went to the contractor and said, can you plant these? So they're gonna be planting milkweed, and the blazing star atridius, one of those 13 varieties underneath those solar panels. So again, we'll have a whole field which will be untouched because they don't want to mow underneath those solar panels. So they're going to go in and make that all native grass, whatever, native plants.
I know years ago, we had a bee problem in the county. We weren't having enough. You know, our friend Jonathan Sams is like
Yes, sir.
a noted beekeeper around, and he told us about, you know, we were having problems.
Yes, sir.
I haven't heard that in a while, but
We are still having problems, so I started 2 years ago. I live going up North Street to the Wayne High School. We're in the yellow brick Victorian on the right. You'll now see Warren County soil signs on my, we call the pollinator backyard. And the kids come down the hill and learn about it. With using an app called iNaturalist, which Cedar Creek told me about and we support, is a non-for-profit that's tracking all the bird migration, birds and everything. Instead of each college having a different database, they put it all together. And it's nationwide. So my first year, I counted 13 different type of native bees that were in my little garden. I'm now up to 32 identified. And you can look it up on iNaturalist and see my yard and see what I've found. I had no idea there was that many frickin' bees. And it's not European bees, which come in the box. These are things that grow in the ground or live in the middle of Waynesville, because we're not on the periphery. And they're just there.
I think
And
I
they showed
just
up because I planted stuff.
read something Jonathan posted, that it's the first time maybe that they were able to get early spring honey. And so they're obviously starting to see the fruits of everyone's collective labor around.
Exactly, and it just continues. We're your garden clubs, your citizens are just saying, hey, we're doing these little things, and we wanted to make sure you knew what we were doing. So if you see opportunities or want to connect people, please, Mrs. Meyer, with the Warren County Soil and Water is my direct interpoint. We have these slides posted on their SharePoint site or website, and then we're working with anybody and everybody just to let them know and try and make win-wins wherever we can. We're not asking anybody to do anything except consider it whenever an opportunity arises, and we'll see what happens. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something different.
well, plus I'm just glad to hear that someone reported, Bruce, what was that, 2 years ago, that the birds had left the county? We're just glad there are birds here.
Yes, sir. And this is a big cause of it. And again, I know the townships going in, up to Wright Pat. We used to have all the ditch lilies and all the different things in the ditch lily going up Bellbrook Road and stuff. And they went in and mowed it down real heavy and did away with that. And that's one of the roads that I distinctly know that I used to drive through it, and I'd wait at work to go later because it would just be Firefly Central. You would just, you know, constantly little lights all over the place, and enjoyed that. No more. So again, it's the little things that we've affected that we didn't even think about. And I'm sure they cleaned that brush out and everything just to make sure no deer popped out on the road. And all well-intentioned, but we didn't think about the second and third effect.
Well, very good. If you're asking for, you know, again, I think what you're saying is very reasonable. I think that's, you know, ties in with keeping a balanced community. You're not trying to take away anyone's rights. You're saying, hey, just think about if you're gonna plant stuff anyway, how about planting this stuff? I'm certainly supportive of your effort.
Well, thank you. And again, that's all we ask is you've been briefed and you're supportive, send them to the Soil and Water District or send them to any of your garden clubs. And we're just making a little change, but we want to make sure everybody's aware of it so it's not a surprise, especially on you. I was on the council up in Waynesville before I deployed. I thank you because we all make the place a little bit nicer, and I know that's big, heavy hoe, and it's not really thanked very much. So thank you for doing the
Thank
heavy
you for
lifting.
sharing today.
You're welcome. Have a great week.
Thanks, you too.
Any other questions?
Thank
Okay.
you.
I need to get back to work.
Michelle, did you have anything?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Very good. Anyone else wish to address the board? Martin, you got anything? Susan?
I do not.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Entertain a motion to
So moved.
Second.
and,
Thanks, everyone.